The avoidant partner wants someone to need them, and that needy partner wants someone who can validate them. But where in marriage this is a problem is you start to judge the other person. Suddenly it's irritating.
Welcome to the car. This is the place, guys. This is the place where Jules and I have the most discussions, the most in-depth
For those of you listening on the
philosophical
podcast,
discussions.
we are in the car right now.
We're in the
You
car
can't
right
see
now.
us. But we want to invite you into our car for these conversations, because if you've ever wondered, like, how are other couples doing it? Like, do other couples struggle like this bad? Like, is marriage supposed to be this way?
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yes, and yes, and yes. You're not alone in your marriage, you guys. Absolutely any problem you feel like you're struggling with right now, relationally, someone else has gone through it. I promise you. From the outside, it's so hard to tell what's going on the inside of a marriage from the outside. Everybody is struggling with something because we're not born just knowing how to be in relationship with each other at a healthy level. Like,
And
we're
then
not really taught that.
You're always telling yourself stories about what's going on too, because your mind likes to filter, it likes to delete and distort and generalize what your experience is. And so that goes perfectly into what we're going to talk about today, is how your attachment style could really filter and really change how you're experiencing your marriage. You don't experience your circumstances, you experience your thoughts about your circumstance, the story that you tell. And we all have these ways of feeling attachment, of feeling connected to our spouse or to other people in a relationship. And that can drastically change your experience.
I want you to think of your attachment style. So this is a psychology term, attachment style. It's a stage of development. We develop the process of how we attach to each other from the time we're very young. Like, we learn this when we're really young with our caregiver, like whoever our parental figure is. It could be your mom, your dad, your grandma, whoever raised you. We develop an attachment style to that caregiver depending on how well we felt like our needs were met, how securely we were able to attach and depend on that parental figure or not. So if there was any sort of neglect, abuse, and not even like toxic abuse, but just like minor, like you felt like you weren't your emotional needs weren't met, you weren't listened to, you weren't validated. All of that plays into how you learn how to attach to other people in relationships. So 100% your attachment style is showing up in your marriage. And I want you to also think of it as a filter. So, like, you know how you can put on like orange colored sunglasses and everything you see is a little bit orangey. Do that with blue glasses, red. You get what I mean, right? It kind of filters everything you see. Your spouse and yourself, you guys have this attachment style that is filtering your marriage. Like, you perceive your partner's behavior through this filter of your attachment style.
Let's dive into the 4 different types of attachment styles. We're going to talk about 1 type of secure attachment style and 3 types of insecure attachment styles. Really, they've been doing studies on these attachment styles since like the 50s, since like the 60s. They've studied humans, they've studied animals and how animals feel a connection and attachment. We were hanging out with some friends. They had a dog that was a rescue dog and that really struggled with its attachment style. And it was kind of cool. Before we hopped on the podcast, we were looking into studies on that. But these attachment styles, they've got them down to 4, and it can really help you figure out where you are with your relationships.
Yes. And before we dive into it, I just want you to notice, like, sometimes we think our marriage is the problem, our partner's the problem, something's wrong. Sometimes it is just the way we're perceiving our marriage, the way we're perceiving our partner, and this is where the attachment styles show up. There may not be a problem. You might be perceiving a problem because of your attachment style. So let's dive in.
Yeah, so first we want to talk about avoidant attachment style. This is an insecure attachment style where people tend to, why don't you talk about this? Because in our marriage, I feel like she kind of relates a little more to the avoidant attachment style with the insecurities. And then for me, I kind of go more towards what we're going to call anxious attachment. We'll talk about that later.
Neither of these attachment styles, when we talk about the insecure attachment styles, is better than the other. Like, one's not more mature than the other. They're both kind of an immature relating to each other. Avoidant is an insecure attachment style where you don't really feel like you can depend on other people.
I'm a big tough girl. I tie my own sandals and everything.
It's You're afraid to depend on other people. As you've grown up, when your needs weren't met, you kind of learn this idea that other people aren't dependable. The only person you can depend on is yourself. And in order to avoid being let down, you just kind of don't let people get too close. And so when your partner is trying to make a bid for connection, there's a little bit of a wall, a little bit of a guard there, because like they might let you down. And so to avoid the pain on the chance that they might let you down, that you can't depend upon them, you're just going to avoid fully connecting with them, fully letting them in and knowing who you are, knowing your ideas and your thoughts, asking for help, because that feels like a weakness. A lot of times with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, they can take a one-up position in their marriage. This comes from therapist Terry Real, that in our marriage dynamics, you can do a one-up or a one down, like in how you view yourself in that partnership. So if you're avoidant, you tend to see like, I don't really have any needs. I'm fine. You're the needy one. And it creates a lack of intimacy and connection in your marriage. It's not good for your marriage. And your partner can map that you're pulling away from them. You're withdrawing from them and putting up this wall. And they're, why can't you just let me in? Can you please let me in? I'm your partner. I love you. But you're just so afraid of being hurt that you put this wall up.
So some of the ways this might look in like your marriage is stonewalling, right? Just putting up that wall, like Jules saying. And also, I would say, well, it's called avoidant, right? And so you might go towards avoidant. You might, in your relationship, if something comes up, if you're having an argument, a discussion, some strong emotions come up, putting yourself in the one-up position, you might say, well, it's not a problem for me. I'm not going to worry about it, you know, and
a lack of vulnerability. You're not willing to be vulnerable with your spouse. So if a vulnerable topic comes up, and that might be your trigger, if they mention something that is a little bit vulnerable for you and makes you maybe feel a little weak, or they might hold up this mirror of like, hey, look at this behavior. This is not a flattering behavior for you. Suddenly you're really defensive and upset about it, but you're just going to ignore it. And they have a problem, not you, because everyone at work loves me. They can get along with me. Why can't you get along with me? This is your problem, not mine.
Sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, can you check in the back?
Because they don't want to look at it. It's too vulnerable. It's too scary. They want to avoid that feeling and that tension.
And I feel like early in our marriage, that was something that Jules, that was how she approached our marriage quite a bit. We'll talk more about that in a minute. For me, I was much more of this anxious attachment style. So speaking from my experience, speaking from how I experienced anxious attachment style, with anxious attachment style, you're constantly looking for validation. You want outside indicators that your relationship's going well. You want to know that things are going right. So you're going to be looking for those things.
Yeah.
When you feel anxious,
your insecurity, you need the validation of others. The avoidant person's like, I will just validate myself. No, thank you. I don't need you.
Right.
But the anxious attachment is like, are we okay? Are we doing okay? Like, do you love me? Is this relationship okay? Am I okay? Am I doing enough? And you need that outside validation because there's not enough inside.
Yeah. And what's funny is if you don't get that outside validation, you'll want to seek it more and more and more, right? And so you might start reaching out more and more and more to try and see, okay, are we okay? Are we not okay? You might start looking for signs in your relationship that we're either okay or not okay and assigning meaning to them. That's just not real, right? That's just, the meaning is something that you make up in your head.
So this could look like calling frequently throughout the day just to check in, like, hey, how was your day? How's your day? Here's how my day, like wanting to connect frequently. Like there's a bit of a neediness in it. Yeah.
And I would have loved that early in our marriage to like reach out and connect multiple times throughout the day or just little things like that. Because that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. And so what would you make it mean if you called me and I didn't respond? If I didn't answer the phone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would have thought, what a jerk. Like literally. And then I would have wondered, okay, you know, are we doing okay? Is our relationship okay? Is she mad? Like what's going on? What's going on with her? What's she making? I would start assuming that she's thinking about me way more than she is, right? Yeah. I would start assuming that she's mad at me, angry at me, upset, whatever.
I feel like you make my behaviors mean something about you.
Absolutely.
Rather than just like, oh, she's probably really busy. She's raising 2 toddlers. Like, she probably doesn't have time for a little chat because she's on the go.
So which
is what was happening.
The first year of our marriage, this is really good. First year of our marriage was us trying to figure out and navigate
Mm-hmm.
how to combine lives as somebody who is more avoidant and somebody who is more
And
anxious.
you guys, these attachment styles attract each other.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Because if you got two avoidants together, they're both independent. They don't need each other. Like, there's not a draw. But the avoidant partner wants someone to need them, because it proves and holds them up in that position that I'm independent. I don't have a lot of needs. And that needy partner wants someone who can validate them, right? And to mirror back to them, like, yeah, I love you. Like, they have that need in them. So oftentimes, even though they seem like opposites, they're, opposites attract, they fit together. They kind of balance each other out. But where in marriage this is a problem is you start to judge the other person. Once you get married and you're living with that person daily, suddenly that attraction of like, oh, they need me and I'm strong. Like, let's hook up. Suddenly it's irritating. It's like, why are you so needy? Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, why
and
can't
the other
you just
person's
open
like,
up
why
to me?
can't you connect? Why can't you be vulnerable?
And you look at it as a weakness in each other, and it's just kind of both an immature to relate, and it causes a lot of tension in your marriage. Like I said, it causes problems that aren't really there. Like Justin calling me in the middle of the day, and in my mind, I'm just like, oh, this is not a good moment for me. I'm really busy right now. And I'm excited for him to come home at the end of the day, and we can talk then. We'll talk about everything that happened today when we go home. It's not that
in my mind, it's like, what a jerk. Why doesn't she want to connect?
Yeah.
So
again, differences. They're just different ways of viewing. And then the last one we'll just do really quickly.
Well, hold on real quick. So anxious. So when we were dating, this is something we were talking about yesterday. When we were engaged, Julie had a million things going on. She was sleeping about 3 hours a night, working in a bakery super early in the morning, going to school. She had some crazy roommate issues.
I was independent.
She was super
I
independent.
wanted to take care of myself.
Right. And as she was going through things that were hard for her, she would kind of retreat a little bit, be that avoidant. And I was seeking that validation to be like, oh my gosh, we just got engaged. Are we still good? And what we were talking about yesterday, what was really funny is that through that all, what would help me feel the most secure in our relationship, what would calm that insecurity, was like when we'd make out. It's like things could be going crazy and then we'd like snuggle or make out, and it's like, okay, well, that's my sign that things are going well. So I was still seeking that sign, right?
Yeah.
When I probably didn't have to be.
And if this is happening in your marriage through like sex, like you need that validation through sex, which can be common, it can actually ruin sex, because your partner will track that neediness. You're trying to get something from me when it's not attractive. So it's doing the opposite in your marriage of what you want it to. So that's why this does show up in your marriage in so many different levels, and it's so good to notice it, right?
So we've talked about anxious, we've talked about avoidant, and now we want to talk about disorganized.
Yeah, disorganized is the trickiest. If you feel like you or your partner have disorganized attachment, I do recommend therapy. Because this is probably going to stem from like a little bit more neglectful abuse on the spectrum. You know, because your parental figure, whoever was caregiving for you, were not reliable. It was a little bit of like a bipolar relationship. Like sometimes they were there and sometimes they just were completely gone, right? And whether that's emotionally or physically, there's a lot of neglect there where you're disorganized, like, and you're confused by your own behaviors. You're not predictable. The way you show up in life is so unpredictable. You will need your spouse and love them and come toward them and like almost suffocate them. And then you will completely withdraw and just not want anything, like stonewall. I'm fine. Get away from me. It's really confusing in your relationships and for yourself too.
Yeah.
You're not sure what's going on. And again, you think the problem is your spouse.
Exactly. So what's really interesting with disorganized, we definitely recommend some type of therapy, EMDR, some deeper work. What we do with clients is timeline therapy, something deeper to just get back to those deep traumas, help you learn from them in a way that you can drop the pain, move into more of a secure attachment style.
Yeah.
All three of these things, the anxious, the avoidant, and the disorganized, where you're doing both of them, but without predictability. All three of those things are toxic. They can be toxic for your relationship. We like to put a lot of names on these things. We like to say, oh, that person's a narcissist. Like, that's such a trendy word. But really, like, what's going on with that is usually a lot of disorganized or anxious or avoidant attachment styles.
So I love that you said that. I don't want you to use this to like analyze your spouse, like, oh, you are avoidant, and put a label on them, because now we're gonna change how we see every interaction with them. But it is information,
and you don't need to cater to that either, right? So it's not to judge your spouse at all, like Jules is saying.
It's to have compassion.
It's to have
collect
compassion.
some data to understand, like, oh, light bulb. Okay, this all makes sense now.
Create some space for them to grow through it on their own time.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly, the number one thing is to look in the mirror and self-confront.
Absolutely. That is the best thing you can do.
The first step when you're going and wanting to move into more of a secure attachment style, when you're wanting to have more security, because that's why those things are toxic. They're toxic to you. They're toxic because you're filtering every experience through that attachment style. They're toxic because you're making it mean that my spouse doesn't love me, when that's just not the case a lot of times. You know, what's really going on is they're a human, they're experiencing life different than you.
Their attachment style.
And their attachment style different than you, and they're assigning different meaning. Like, so that's what's going on.
The last attachment style is secure attachment, which just means that you are secure in yourself. You have learned how to trust people. You can let them into your life. You don't feel like you constantly need their validation to feel okay about yourself. There's some differentiation. Like, I can be okay alone and in relationship with you.
Yeah.
So it just shows up like emotionally stable and regulated, able to communicate your needs, able to listen to your partner's needs without getting defensive. That's kind of that secure attachment. And you can change your change your attachment style, guys. This isn't that we're not talking here so you can be like, label yourself like, oh, this is my attachment style, this is who I am. No, we're teaching you these things so you can look at yourself in the mirror, self-confront, identify what your pattern is to change your pattern. You guys, our brains are neuroplastic. They can change. We can change our patterns even though we developed them from a really young age. You're an adult now. Do the work.
Yeah, this podcast is about doing the work. It's about taking the things that the most successful, happiest couples do and being able to replicate them. So if what you want to do, moving into that secure attachment style, well, first, what that looks like for me, I feel like I've really moved into, personally, in our relationship, a much more secure attachment style. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like for me is if I come home and Jules is on her period, something's... And she's emotionally off.
How would you know that, Justin?
Oh, I've got to count. No, I'm just joking.
What's wrong?
Nothing. No, your mom's just feeling emotional.
She was like this last month, and the month before, and the month before.
I'm not joking. But if she's off, if I walk through the door and she's yelling at the kids, she's snapped because it's been a long day. If I come in and she's hypercritical of me, any of those things, any of those external things, how do I feel about our relationship? Am I making it mean something about our relationship, or am I secure?
Or about yourself?
Yeah.
Or are you putting it back on me like, is it a you problem? Is it a me problem? Right?
So I walk in and I see Jules in an upset state, and I have a lot more compassion for her. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going through something. She's making this mean something really difficult.
Yeah.
Right? She needs to step back a little bit.
And then you can,
Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with our relationship. I made a decision long ago, I would say the day that I married Jules, that I'm going to choose this relationship, and I get to choose how I show up in it. I get to choose what I make things mean. Right? And so I got to keep remembering that every day, that I choose this relationship.
And I'm saying, look, when you come through that door and you have that attitude, like, oh, she's going through something, rather than like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Is something wrong? And then you're trying to pull something from me when I'm in that state. Yeah. Instead, you're like, okay, how can I help? How can I support you? Right? And then I am a lot more likely to mellow down very quickly, versus if I'm in that state and you come and trying to get something from me, some validation, that's not the time.
Right.
It's going to escalate.
Because people will do that, like a dog, that's getting reprimanded. They'll come and they'll want to snuggle. They'll want to prove that things are all right.
The kindest thing you can do for your spouse is learn to emotionally regulate. That is the kindest thing you can do for your spouse. Not putting your emotions onto them, putting your insecurities onto them. Those are yours to manage. They're not your partner's to manage. Like, yes, you're in a relationship with each other, but the more you can self-confront and then self-soothe. Those are my two S words that I love. Maybe the third one's sex. like all three of those words. But self-confront and self-soothe will lead to better sex.
So the first thing that you do when you're feeling that is notice it, right? When you notice what you've got going on, if you're in an anxious or an avoidant attachment style, the first step to change, to being able to step out of it, is just one, to notice it. Notice where you're at.
You cannot change a habit you don't know exists.
Right.
You have to be aware of it. And just that awareness will create shifts, you guys. So now that you've learned these tools and you start watching your behaviors, I don't want you to go into this like, crap, I'm an anxious attachment. Wow, dang it. What's wrong with me? Like, just observe it with curiosity. Like, oh, this is so interesting. Yeah, I do feel really anxious in my relationship. I do constantly feel like maybe our marriage is on the rocks and that they don't approve of me, and I'm constantly seeking that external validation from my partner. How interesting, right? Keep it curious, keep it open, and you're going to notice it will start to shift just by observing it. It changes the pattern just by observing it.
Because by observing it, you're changing the meaning already.
Exactly.
You stop assigning meaning.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you do is observe. The second thing is you look at the meaning that you're giving it, right?
Self-confront.
You got to self-confront that thought, what you're making it mean, and maybe try on a different thought.
Yeah.
Maybe try on a different meaning.
Sometimes just write it down. Like, this is why journaling is so helpful. Being like, okay, that situation the other day got really defensive and I'm kind of in that needy stance or that avoidant stance. Like, what was going on for me? You got to get some introspection. Go inside and have a conversation with yourself. Like, what did I make that mean? What was going on for me? Then challenge the story that you told yourself. These are just thoughts, right? Try to change them, manipulate them. It's like, is that really what she meant? Or am I just making that story up? This is just a story my brain is feeding me. It's not moral truth.
Okay, so the third thing you want to do is self-soothe. We've talked about observing. We've talked about confronting your story. And now we want to talk about self-soothing. So what you're looking at is two things that you've done with your mind, one thing that you're going to do with your body.
Yeah.
Right?
Because when you're in this attachment style and you tell yourself this story, it's going to trigger a reaction in you. You're triggering your nervous system, that fight, flight response. That is a visceral, physiological reaction. And you can't just say, okay, I'm done with that. It's not going to leave. It's in your body. You have all these chemicals and emotions floating in your body.
A lot of stress coming in, so much pressure on our lives.
You've got to take care of yourself.
We're going to talk about a few ways to do that. But for you, what you got to look at is like, what works for you? Okay.
Yeah, everyone's different.
So ways to change your physiology. We talk about this a lot because it changes your filter so much. Okay. So the thing we talked about in the podcast last time was just taking a deep breath. A deep breath in, long exhale. That long exhale will release some endorphins in your brain and will get you to a spot where you can move out of that anxious or that avoidant attachment style and into a more healthy place.
Yeah, you're just going to regulate yourself a little bit more. It's like this. I like the whoosh feeling. I like describing it that way. Like, what's triggering you? Okay. You do that with the self-confront. Like, what am I making that mean? Like, what triggered my nervous system to go out and whack that whoosh? Like, I suddenly got defensive. I wanted to avoid and stonewall, or I wanted to like pull for him for some more validation. Like, what's triggering that response? What happened? And then when that does happen, it's going to happen again, guys. Okay. We don't change overnight. Again, you were just observing this pattern. And then when you notice that trigger, you're self-confronting and you're self-soothing. You're calming yourself down. What calms you down?
You can tell how worked up you are and what's going to work for you. So for me, most of the time a deep breath works. There was one time where I had just broken up with this girl. She was like chewing me out for like 30 minutes over the phone. And that anxious energy was like way up here. I could feel it in my body. And for some people to go for a sprint, for me, I got down on my hands and I just did a bunch of push-ups. I just did as many push-ups as I possibly could until I collapsed. I did more push-ups than I'd ever done in my entire life because that anxious energy was so high, that adrenaline was so high. And at the end of that helped me calm down. That helped me get to a good spot.
There's a quote by Tony Robbins: when you're in your head, you're dead. Get out of your head. If you're spinning on the story, this is actually really useful. Like, if you're trying to journal, I'm like, I can't think of any other meaning. This is just true. And your brain's spinning on this story and it's making the emotions worse. Go self-soothe first and then come back to self-confronting when you're in a calmer state. Like, regulate that nervous system. We do that by moving our body. There's a temptation just to numb out, grab your phone and start scrolling. Go to the pantry and look for the bag of chocolate chips or the donuts, or binge Netflix because you're just like, I just want to ignore these emotions. Guess what? Those emotions are still hanging out. Once that Netflix show is over, guess what's going to be there waiting for you? All that anxious emotion. You have to do something physical to release it. So going on a run, going on a walk, taking deep breaths, grounding, like going out in nature, seeing some blue sky and some sunshine, listening to music, doing something creative. These are just all ideas. Like we're all going to be a little bit different. So you've got to ask yourself, like, make a little list, like what works for me? What helps me feel centered and calm? Prayer, meditation, journaling, all of these things can get us from our amygdala monkey brain that's freaking out, help push us into that adult brain where we can see things from a better perspective.
Exactly. I was listening to a presentation by Wendy Nelson the other day, and she was talking about needing to get an answer from God. She said, I went out into the mountains, stayed at a little cabin they had. She said, I spent the first day connecting with nature, and I spent the second day connecting with God. So if you're wanting to feel more connection in your relationship with your spouse, or if you're trying to get answers from God, sometimes taking a step back, really getting into your physiology, really noticing the world around you and seeing it from a different angle is a critical step to getting out of your head. So those three things, right? Observing, self-confronting, and changing your physiology.
Self-soothing.
Self-soothing is what we call that. Yeah, self-soothing. That's how you're going to get into a more secure attachment.
Yeah, and you baby step towards how can I, for the needy person, how can I validate myself and just feel secure in our relationship, even though my partner's not behaving in the way I think they should?
Yeah.
And for the avoidant person, how can I learn to open up, be vulnerable, trust my partner, let them in?
This is not so much about one grand gesture, one thing you do in one day, and more about one thing that you do every day. So small things done over and over and over again that change your relationship and make it divine.
Your best relationship is ahead of you.
Yeah.
Go love. We're going to get so much better talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we are.
I hope.
What are you talking about? We're amazing.